What's up, YouTube gamers? Today I'm going to be talking about my Last Epoch build. This is a character that I've made by myself as a super noob to the game. It's actually my first hardcore character in Last Epoch, and I haven't really played softcore. So I didn't really have a good idea of what I want to do. The only thing that I wanted to do was dots. So this is going to be a diary for my Dot Lich. I've been getting a lot of questions about it since it is a little bit unusual, as it is dots, but it's not really ailments. Partially it is, but it doesn't use like chance to inflict an ailment. Instead, it gets all of those things from either the abilities themselves or your passive points. So you don't really have to do anything special in terms of your gear, like you don't need chance to ignite or chance to poison or anything like that. The primary damaging ability is Spirit Plague, which I found to be really cool. It's like Locust Swarm from Diablo 3, and I've been enjoying it quite a lot. Keep in mind, however, that I have no idea about the unique items in this game. I have zero clue about dungeons. I haven't done that either. The highest level content that I've done so far is a level 80 monolith, and this character is level 75. So I think I'm doing okay, but I don't have perspective as to how this build will evolve in the future. It might go through a lot of changes. It probably will. And I'll try to keep you guys updated. But as it is right now, Spirit Plague is my main source of AoE and single target. It's super cool. Hopefully Titan's showing you guys some of the footage in the edit right now as to how it works. But like I said, it's basically Locust Swarm from Diablo 3. And the cool thing about this ability is that it uses things like Pestilence, which means anytime you cast, you gain a buff as long as it's hitting a mob. And this buff gives you 15% increased global damage over time and stacks up to 13 times. And then you've got another one which is called Endless Decay. This gives you increased poison damage and stacks up 13 times. You get both of these in tangent. One's based off of the Plague Bearer, which is a pretty cool non-stacking source of damage over time with necrotic damage. And then you can buff it up with things like the poison penetration over here. And so essentially the idea is to spam as quickly as possible to get that global damage increase up and get as many of them as possible. But another thing about this is toxic transmission. Enemies you inflict with Spirit Plague are also inflicted with poison for the same duration, which functions pretty uniquely. But I'll talk about that in a second after I explain Hemorrhage, which is enemies you inflict with Spirit Plague are also inflicted with bleed for the same duration. So what's so unusual about this? We don't hit, and the duration of these ailments is based off of the duration of our Spirit Plague. So as much as our Spirit Plague's damage does not stack by casting it repeatedly onto the same enemy, but it does exist on the mob, we can spam that to get the global damage increases. Then we can spam that to get the hemorrhage and the toxic transmission. And the only thing that's increasing the duration of these ailments is going to be the duration of our Spirit Plague, which is why I'm specialized into increased duration over here and increased duration and cast speed over here. These nodes are especially extremely good. Even if you were to get external amounts of increased poison duration or bleed duration or anything like that, I think Lich has that somewhere over here. For instance, this increased poison duration 7%. This will not work. The duration of your ailments is specifically tied to the duration of your Spirit Plague, which makes it amazing because we don't need to get any chance or anything like that. We can't increase the amount of stacks that we get, but it allows us to itemize in like a very simple way. So it's great for AoE, and it's a great single target if you're capable of spamming it. And what's extra cool about this is that if you use a wand, my wand currently really sucks. I'm looking for a new one. But the really important part about these sort of wands is the -3 spell mana cost, what makes it so that my Spirit Plague actually doesn't cost any mana, which allows me to use my mana in like a super aggressive way. For most builds, you're pretty limited in mana from what I've seen so far. But this build doesn't really run into that issue in the same way, which is nice because even if you're out of mana, let's say like this, I can continue to cast and it actually continues to do the same thing. So super cool. We're never limited. And then I guess I could talk about the other skills. I can't really talk much about the itemization. So far, the things that I've discovered is that endurance is really good because we use Reaper and we use Death Seal to increase our damage, which kind of puts us in a low life state. But since we're leeching so much through being a Lich, it's very nice. And considering this is a hardcore character, I guess I'll talk about the next ability that in my opinion is super underutilized, because everybody told me that this skill is bad, and I don't know if it's like bugged in the beta or whatever, but to me it seems like a completely crazy ability, and that's going to be Drain Life. Channeled spells that target up to 3 enemies around the target location, dealing necrotic damage over time and leeching 30% of that damage back as health. This leech damage seems to be applied additively with the amount of leech that you get from anything else, which gives you obscene amounts of leech. I pretty much heal up instantly from any amount of damage, and since all leech in this game seems to have overleech, the way that it is in PoE, that leech stays there even if you are capped out on your HP. And what makes this skill super OP, despite the damage on the necrotic portion not being that high, is, as you've noticed, I don't channel it because I take Dark Shackles. This means that Drain Life is now cast instead of channeled, lasts for 3 seconds, and any upfront mana modifier change, blah blah blah, doesn't really matter. So we get more duration on this, we get a nice juicy long duration, and this continuously applies a leech for us. So the whole time I could be moving and it's leeching and it's crazy like that. But on top of it, it has Condemnation, which is Drain Life applies stack of Damned. Each second, Damned is an ailment that deals necrotic damage over time. And then you've got Unholy Mass, which scales that incredibly well. And you can get 8 stacks each second, which is crazy. To anybody that doesn't know, Damned is an ailment that deals 35 damage over 2.5 seconds. Super powerful. We don't have to hit with it. It's just there. And just from this ability alone, I pretty much always have, you know, whatever this times this is, 40 stacks. It's crazy. And then you can continue to increase your mana efficiency. You can continue to get more leech. I really find this to be, maybe it's my hardcore perspective, I don't know. I feel like as a single target skill, this ability is insane because the mana cost is really high. But remember, our mana doesn't cost anything. And it stacks too. It's not that you can only cast one if you've got other sources of mana regeneration. Maybe you're using skeletons or transplant, or maybe you just have a lot of mana regen on your gear. You can actually cast 2 circles or however many you want, and this stacks. It stacks on every single part of the ability, including the leech, which in my eyes is super OP because it just continues to go as you move around and dodge attacks and whatnot. Super duper useful, especially since we use Reaper. As any Lich would use Reaper, I do as well. Right now, my Reaper is focused on increasing my HP, or increasing my damage, excuse me, and increasing my clear. So I get a bunch of damage here, I get a bunch of damage here, I get swiftness pretty much throughout the entirety of the map, and I also get cast speed, which further improves my Spirit Plague. Right now, temporarily, also, I have the armor, although armor doesn't seem that powerful in this game. And I've got the Vile Shroud, which caps out my poison and necrotic resistance. This is just a hardcore thing. I don't think those nodes are going to be there in the end. It kind of depends on how my itemization is going to land, but that's kind of the idea. And to anybody, I guess, that doesn't know what Reaper does, I'll explain it. Take on the Mantle of Death itself. Temporarily gaining the Reap ability. While in Reaper form, your health regen does not apply, and your health decays over time. When your health reaches 0, instead of dying, you transform back to human form and are healed to full health. So basically, it's like a cheat death from Diablo 3, but it also increases the amount of damage, and we get all the buffs in this Reaper form. And most importantly, it gives us a movement ability, because as you can see, whenever I'm not in Reaper form, I don't actually have a movement ability. So this is super good, but it's even better if you use it in tandem with the Death Seal. What Death Seal does, it's a toggleable ability that you can apply lots of different effects to. In my case, I primarily use it for this. Deadlock. If your health is above 33% of your maximum when you activate Death Seal, it is reduced to 33% of your maximum health. So this essentially means that we are lower to this amount of health. This is good because our endurance kicks in, but most importantly, with us being in our Reaper form, we don't actually get stunned as much. And even if we were to die, we don't actually die, we just go back into our human form. So far, that's only ever happened to me once, but my build is incredibly defensive right now, so just keep that in mind when watching the combat footage, that I will be getting a lot more damage, but even now, I feel like it clears and does quite a lot of damage currently. But yeah, through the use of Desperate Shroud, we had armor per missing health, and most importantly, stun avoidance per missing health, which means that I don't really get stunned a whole lot. This also enables another ability, and this is kind of a personal choice here, but I ended up going with Entreat the Damned, which buffs up my last ability, the Wandering Spirits. But you can also go with Devouring Release, and instead of using Wandering Spirits, you would then use Hungering Souls. From what I heard, there's some unique item that makes Hungering Souls really OP, but as of right now, for me, in my setup, I did try the Devouring Release, and I just didn't like it. I feel like the skill wasn't really doing a whole lot of damage at all. The mana cost was really intrusive in terms of like min-maxing my drain life uptime. And yeah, it just wasn't that great. One thing that is great about Hungering Souls is this is 40%, a 40% global damage buff for us, but I just felt like it wasn't worth it because, as I'm about to explain with my last ability, Wandering Spirits is crazy. This skill seems completely overpowered. I have not seen another skill in which I look at the tree and I want to pick up every single possible node because of how strong it is in every variation. If you're playing a poison build, it's incredibly strong. If you're playing a pure necrosis build, it's incredibly strong because you can get these nodes. Look at this node as an example. Spirits deal more damage to cursed enemies and damned enemies. 24% more damage per node. This node, 10% more damage per node, and the spirit movement speed is incredibly useful. Tons of duration that you can get on these spirits. You can make it so that the reveal duration, the reveal range is smaller, which means that as these spirits reveal, they do so in a smaller area, so there's much more overlap. Some people think that these spirits don't overlap in damage and it's only one of them that can deal damage, but that's actually not the case. They absolutely overlap, and it just makes for a ton of damage. Right now, I'm also using Locus Mortis, which means that spirits are now revealed around the target location rather than around you. And this is super cool, but I don't know if it's quite worth it. I'm still experimenting with it. Again, keep in mind that I'm an incredibly unexperienced hardcore player, so I'm gonna move around a lot. I'm gonna be dodging a lot of the times things that are static in their form, like this or like the drain life, are just going to be very useful because, you know, I'm probably dodging an unnecessary amount because I just don't know. Is the thing that's attacking me gonna kill me? Is it not? I have no idea. But now we go to the most important part and why this actually works compared to the global buff that we would have otherwise gotten from the other ability. And that is Wandering Spirits shred the necrotic resistance of enemies near them, which is incredible. Necrotic resistance shred reduces necrotic resistance by 5%, and as you've noticed, other than the bleed and the poison damage, which is a pretty small portion of our damage overall, especially in a boss fight, we do almost entirely necrotic damage. So this is just super effective. It's 2% against bosses, but it does stack up to 10 times. And with this ability, it has 100% uptime no matter what, unless the boss like completely just leaves the place. And then you can also get another form of stacking Damned, as it does stack infinitely, which is the Sins of the Forgotten. It gives you a 90% chance per second. Again, none of this hits ever unless you're using this, which I'm not. None of this hits, so you cannot increase this percentage through chance on hit, but I feel like it's still working really well. And currently I'm experimenting with 2 different things. I'm using Terrifying Presence, which is not good. It fears things. I don't really like it. But what this gives us is Harrowing Aura, which is essentially AoE for our Drained Will and our Sense of the Forgotten. I like it since this seems to have a larger AoE than the actual damage from the spirits. You will also have this node available, which reduces the fear duration, which in my eyes is good. But as you can tell, it also has 12% more damage on the node. And then you've got other really useful things. But the alternative is obviously scaling the damage on the Wandering Spirits through either these nodes, getting more duration, or what's even crazier is this. You get cast speed over here. Unfortunately, you have to spec into these nodes, which are not that good, but it's still 8% more damage. The spirit movement speed, you know, it's RNG. I don't know if it's actually good. I feel like slowing the spirits down is probably better, but it's just so hard to tell. But then if you get to the last point, you've got reveal duration here, which is really good. But if you get to the last point, it's increased size for the spirits and 30% AoE, which makes the overlap completely crazy. So this is just one of those trees where you want to pick up every single thing. But why am I using this as a synergy? And that's because of the Entreat the Damned. This means that if Wandering Spirits is active, when you activate Death Seal, is granted additional duration. This is a little bit wonky because it's all about like reveal duration for the spirits so they don't get dispelled at the end of the ability. But what it does mean is that our uptime is so high that we can in fact click the Wandering Spirits, click the Death Seal, and these guys are all applying Damn, they're all applying Shred, and they're dealing tons of damage whenever they overlap with the enemy. And you can see it's already back up, and I've got spirits up the whole time. So even without this, the uptime is really good, but like this, the uptime is perfect. And on a boss, especially in a small arena, or if something's like in a wall, it just shotguns so freaking well. So I don't know if this is going to be my final setup on this character, but it works super well. And yeah, if you've understood the skill explanation, that's pretty much all that we're focusing on gear. Damage over time, our #1 stat, no doubt. And then necrotic damage would be second. And then really, you don't need anything else. Spell damage is good, but it doesn't work on the ailments. So necrotic damage and spell damage should be at equivalent value. I'm currently looking for ways to incorporate ward into this build because we get a lot of intelligence. One of the big things about this build is that it doesn't regenerate HP, but it leeches an insane amount of HP through being a lich and through the usage of Drain Life. So on your skill tree, you really want to be picking up things that increase spell damage, increase damage over time, nodes such as this one, but also nodes that increase your leech. And in my eyes, those are super duper strong. Harvest Legions is kind of cool, you know, for a little bit of face tanking. And then, yeah, everything that I'm getting is just int scaling. Some mana scaling is definitely useful, so nodes like these ones are super good. Penetration works on dots in this game, so you can totally pick up nodes like this one. Obviously, global damage over time increases are super good. You can see that I'm starting to scale into spell damage here. And if you're also playing this on hardcore, I would highly recommend just getting some survivability. You can see more intelligence here. I have some resistances. Vitality is obviously super good as this scales. This game primarily scales with HP due to the endurance mechanic. And you can even see that my resistances aren't great, but I'm slowly working on them as I'm improving my character. Generally, from what I understand, liches don't have as much HP as a lot of other characters, but there are some gear pieces that I've had since a very long time and just need to improve them, such as this or this. They're generally pretty terrible. I mean, this is a level 31 item. It's super good for me, but I can find a much better version of this. So yeah, defensively, get a lot of HP, try and cap out your resistances, and yeah, in my eyes, it just works. You want to focus on getting as much Spirit Plague as possible and getting as much damage over time as possible. I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, so far, I'm super noob, so I'm learning a lot. But since people were asking about the build, I figured might as well make a short explanation for the YouTube video, even though it was not short. I'll try out dungeons. I'll try out more higher level monoliths. We'll see where it takes us. I'm probably gonna die very, very soon. But if I don't, anticipate another update on the build. Hopefully next time with some cool, unique items that are going to drastically improve my character. If they even exist. I don't know. We'll see. See you guys in the next one. Thanks.